morning, good evening, good day, good night, wherever you are on the planet. This is John Dupuy, CEO of iWeight Technologies and founder of Integral Recovery, author of that book, and a bunch of stuff. And Javi Otero is with us. He's a CTO, Chief Technological Officer, the guy, the brains in iWake. No, we all have brains. But anyway, he's here with us. And we have Kari Hohne. And Javi, you and Kari have known each other for a while, and I've just been catching up on it, and I'm really fascinated to dig into this thing. There are a lot of things that really turned me on in your bio plus effect. I've been using your website for years now. And anyway, I'm very excited about the whole subject, and this is Spiritual Technologies 2.0, and we're examining how technology can bring spirituality into a more integrated and healthy and living form in our human family in the 21st century. And it's time to show up, wake up, and grow up. So that's what we're about. So,
well, thank you for including me in your group.
Just wanted to say that moved me, and also serendipitously enough, I used your website to do an I Ching cast, I guess you call it, for the New Year's.
So you found my I Ching before you knew that we were going to do this interview? You were just
using it for years. I've been using it for quite a while. And, I'll be on the road or something, and I won't have I have this old Wilhelm Reich, beat up old volume, yellow cover, one of these classic things with the introduction by Carl Jung, and I'll get some quarters or whatever coins, whatever country, and I'll throw those. But then it's like, internet, bam, there it was, and it was just so interesting and so easy. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, the whole principle of the I Ching is basically there is no randomness. Everything has an implicit order in it, and when we do these things, somehow it reflects back the archetypes in our current reality, and it's a very strange and mysterious.
It's like a snapshot of the picture of evolution as it's turning in a circle.
Yeah,
it's like it's never ending. It's beginning and it's just going around. And I feel like the I Ching is capturing. What I love about Taoist philosophy, which is really behind the I Ching, is that it's based on nature, and that it's based on the concept that in our world we want stagnation or stasis or comfort, and in the natural world it isn't about that. So it's a constant tug and war. Which Javi and I we worked a lot together in dream work, and it's really nice to finally see you. But we know we both love Taoism, and we both love the nature inspiration, and that's another aspect of my I Ching, is that I bring a lot of the ancient Chinese quotes from the masters into it. I've done a translation. I think it's the most comprehensive out there because I've looked at everybody else's, and I've included the quotes and a lot of Taoist stuff. And I've included on every line, there's the, what the line would have changed into, so that you can, the lines are difficult to interpret, as you probably, anybody who interprets the I Ching, it's not, you don't do it overnight. Right. So, and I feel like ultimately it really, I'm not saying you could ever say definitively it's that's the right interpretation, but at least it gives somebody enough to explore the message to make it meaningful for them.
Yeah. Obviously, if I was using your website, I was reading your translation, so it was really good and was really comprehensive. And a lot of different kind of, different perspective and different quotes from different masters. It was really useful.
And another thing that I did on that website, Café Soul, is I have Astrology Dreams, the I Ching, and when you're reading one interpretation, let's say in the I Ching, you might stumble on 44 coming to meet, the very controversial hexagram. Is it a bad lady that's, temptation? And I see it as the shadow, which is something that you would explore in the dream section. Or if you were in astrology, you'd be looking at the planet Uranus. It shakes things up. So I cross-pollinate the different archetypal themes among the different sections, which is why I think it's a great place for people to come and really just see the full on what we've made of our collective symbols and how they transfer over into different disciplines. I mean, we're all saying the same thing. but they're saying it in different languages.
Yeah, and you've taken an ancient, I guess I Ching could be called a technology, sure. According to the definition in the encyclopedia, it can be. Sometimes I think of, technology has to be an artifact or something, but it doesn't. And you've taken this ancient wisdom and brought it forward, with our current understanding of a lot of stuff, psychology and dreams and the unconscious and Jung and Freud and this and that and the other, and brought it into a way that now, again, the internet keeps being kind of the meta platform for all this, that you can take it to the whole world, living wherever you did. And 15 years ago, that was not the case.
Right. So the oracle, the first time that you showed me that, you said that you managed to do it in a way that is nearly scary accurate. Can you tell us how you managed? What's the idea behind it? What's the technology behind it?
Well, it's basically built, the logic for the I Ching on my site is built the same way as if you were throwing coins. Well, not necessarily the Euro stocks, because it's a little bit more complicated, but there's a line built from the bottom up. And so I'm very much a stickler when I'm working with developers that this all has to be random. So you throw the first line, you throw the second line, you throw the third line, and your intention is, in my feeling, your intention is transferring in what you're doing. So obviously, the I Ching, based on what the lines do, is it an old line, a new line? Is it changing? So I didn't create a site that throws a hexagram. I created a site that throws a possibility of 4 different lines, so I went right to the root of it. And then, based on the hexagram that you get, that's between you and what you threw. It has nothing to do with me.
So, no, I was just going to ask as well that with the interpretations, when you get all those characters in the I Ching, the emperor, the king, the prince, when you get the different characters on the interpretation of the hexagrams, it's very easy to take the meaning literal. But I know from your interpretations that nothing is literal. So can you please explain a bit about the way that you work? I'm very interested in you sharing that, because
well, again, it comes from my, the thing I've been doing most of my life is the dream work, understanding symbols, and understanding that there's a side of us that's constantly evolving. And so most of what I write, whether it's in dream interpretation or, approaching the nature-inspired aspect of the I Ching based on how the Taoists would have, worked with it, judgment is something that is just going to be our undoing. The harder we hold on, the more life shakes us out of our shoes, So when I'm bringing an interpretation forward, I would never say it's the definitive answer. I'd say, hey, look at this and explore it. It could be, a possibility here. And then, it's written from the point of view that, everything is about change. Like a lot of people approach the I Ching and want a definitive answer. And I don't know if you've felt this before, but sometimes it mocks you. There's one hexagram that's number 4, youthful folly, and you can get that as an answer if you're not serious enough in asking your question, or asking the same question and not stepping back. And I'm very clear on my site. Don't use this as a toy. It's not a plaything. Take some time before you ask the same question. Make sure that you've read the lines, all possible, variations of the interpretation. So I think it's somebody went to space.
Yeah, I think it's very similar working with the I Ching is working with dreams. They're symbols of power. They have power. They have psychic interior power, and which of course it can manifest in all the quadrants or all dimensions, however you want to say that. And I pulled, or I cast hexagram 25, and that has been just staying with me, and it constantly kind of working with it, and it's really appropriate for some of the things
it's exactly what we're talking about. It's being at that threshold without judgment. It's complete innocence. letting go of any, anything that would be from the past influence in how we're interpreting the present, That's just funny because that's exactly what we're talking about.
Well, and so it's great. We're talking about spiritual technology. I'm using this meditational technology to keep my practice powerful and transformational, but I'm also using an ancient, very ancient, constantly evolving. I think these traditions, if they're to be kept alive, each generation has to work with them in their own way, and they add something to the transmission. But putting these two things together, then there's something very cool going on there, and something that, while generations before that had, we could meditate or we could pray, get the 50,000 foot view, or we can step back and go, oh my God, look what we are involved with, and really, really treat it with great respect.
I've been exploring Ma Wang, Mahjong, Ma Wang, which is a game from ancient China, but it's also an oracle. But what's fun about it is that I'm tracing it back to that tortoise shell that really, they say, was the original inspiration. And some of the, I'm really kind of getting deep, like I felt like I knew everything about ancient Chinese philosophy because I've studied it for so long, but it's kind of like I've opened up this whole nother area. It's much more about the dots and lines, and it reminds me a lot of what I see in the Mayan world. So that's, if you were to say, where am I at right now? And Javi knows me, Javi. I get on something, and if you go looking at the Maya ruins, you see a lot of similar things. So these dots and lines for the Maya, were dates, or had a certain language for them, and I'm seeing that. Like if you were to ask somebody how old is the Ma Wang game or whatever, it came over here at like the late 1800s and became a big thing once when England was a big part of China. But there's a root to it. That there's a positioning when you're using it for oracle exploration that really is a lot like feng shui. There's an orientation of east-west, and then you can trace it back to the original pakua that are the trigrams that make up the hexagram. So anyway, but it's not so much that I'm seeing so much about this another ancient pathway into their thoughts, which the Chinese were brilliant. Not that they're not today, but it's sad that a lot of it got overthrown in the Marxist revolution, a lot of their thoughts and Taoist ideas and stuff. But anyway, to be able to cross-pollinate it again with another culture, I'm quite fascinated, which I spend a lot of time in the Maya world. So it's kind of fun to look at these dots and lines and learn a new language. Because when, I think music for me is a language. When I'm interpreting an astrological chart, it's a language. I read languages that don't have anything to do with letters, and I don't know if that makes sense, but if Javi knows because I've done his chart. If I look at a sign in a house and the aspect, it's like a whole story starts coming to me. It's like taking CAT and you see something that meows, or you get CAB and it's honking and you're trying to grab it in New York, a cab versus a cat. And when I'm reading a chart, it looks like that to me. It looks like a language. Like I can, why are you counting in the dark? What happened? Oh, my dad wouldn't let me express my feelings as a kid and he'd make me go count, and I can see all that in the chart. It's very, very, very interesting. I'm definitely a language interpreter, but not the normal kind. First of all, I think the reason that I really got dreams at a very young age is because I was a poet, and you're a poet. So, and poetry is about finding that metaphor that you pick up an image and it says so much. And that's what Freud would have written about condensation. Somehow our mind is so ingenious when we're asleep that it comes up with that perfect symbol that captures the complexity of a situation we can't explain. So metaphor and poetry and dreams are a lot alike. And so that's the first piece of that kind of archetypal world of the collective unconscious, the thing that's bigger than us. And then when you start to watch your dreams, you get a sense, and you experience this in dream work with me, Javi, you get a sense that there's some side of you that knows more about what's going on in your life than you. So who is that other side of us?
Right.
And then to take it one step further, I don't believe in a separation between the dream, wake, dream cycle. Like I always think of, in fact, this might sound really trite, but Wansu, he has that statement about, I dreamed, just woke from a dream of a butterfly, but now I'm not sure if I'm a butterfly dreaming of being a man or if I'm a man dreaming of being a butterfly. And you've heard that, and I've heard it before, but it's making much more sense to me, you know. So there's this. I think that most people aren't given credibility to anything other than discernment, consciousness, planning, you know, that mind that rules us all day. But I have spent my whole life straddling both sides. So that's, you know, I mean, obviously that's an artistic way of looking at life. I think art is very important in education because it's what gives a kid inner direction. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question directly, but we are more than what we're aware of. And the more that we give credibility to the incredible, the more that we transcend our own boundaries. It breaks my heart that people think that art and education, why would you teach a kid to play guitar? We all know you don't make money with music, okay? I can tell you there's pirating but I used to do these classes with kids in East LA. They were at risk of going to gangs. And if a kid doesn't have inspiration and inner direction, all he has is peer pressure. And these kids would come into my class, and every day that I was with them over 6 weeks was a different art form. And it was basically, hey, here's a blank piece of paper. What are you going to do? You know, what's inspiration? Where do you get your idea? And I would trick them into writing 3-line poems that were based on feelings, although I didn't tell them to express their feelings. They started to, right, when they're sharing their poetry. So the transformation in 6 weeks, only meeting with them 1 hour a week, was incredible. It was like they were able to not only get inspired about what they were going to do with their life, they recognized that they weren't the only ones on an island. So art and education is what's going to give children, you know, the biggest sense of direction. And it's not about the product. It's about teaching kids to think from their own inner drummer, giving credibility to the incredible.
Are looking at what, you know, you might each consider random data, as in the case of dreams, and or the I Ching or whatever, and all of a sudden seeing patterns that are of deep meaning. The more you look, the more you see. Just like great literature, great poetry, or great music. You know, it's like, oh, that's what it meant. Well, no, that's what it, maybe it's what it meant for the artist when they're doing. It's not necessarily what it means right now, or means for you, or meaning 25 years from now. You know, these things or these symbols are just shifting. And I found in my work that you know, with clients and students, they start doing this brain entrainment stuff, and the dream life becomes really, really active. All of a sudden, people never had dreams, dreaming in color and having these very powerful dreams.
If you've got, you know, everything's about energy. And if energy is sort of like held and stuck and, you know, protected in the closet, shadowed, however you want to call it, and you start doing work and you start getting fearless enough to work with it and explore it, energy's released. And, you know, people will tell me, all of a sudden I have all this energy. I feel so, you know, so just the openness to confront the fact that maybe you need to grow, there's something here for you. It does seem to release energy.
I wanna ask you a question about this. Working with you for me was amazing in that your message is unique because it's empowering and there's nothing to protect. You know, your message is always about not defending. There aren't any harsh warnings either, you know. Of course, the work needs to be done, but there's no fear about the work or the consequences of the work or what lies ahead. And I think that's beautiful. And I've always wondered if it's something that you developed with time or something that also you learned from somebody or, you know.
The only thing I can kind of compare it to, like, you know, again, as a child, I was interpreting dreams. So for whatever reason, I just had that metaphorical, poetic, you know, way of thinking. But in my book, The Mythology of Sleep, I talk about, well, let's say Freud, Jung, and Joseph Campbell, specifically, he writes about the hero's journey through myths. And I write about the hero's journey in dreams. But it's very similar. So certainly, you know, Freud, Jung, Campbell, great inspirations. But the idea that, and this goes back to the fearlessness, it's almost a scientific process. I see three parts to a dream. In the first part, the conflict is described in imagery, and then it morphs, and then it seems like it has to do with something in your past. So that tells me, well, this is how it got created. And then the third part is the one that's most associated with a vision of the future. It can be very prophetic. But what's weird is that third part is also the one that I call the aha, but it's the one where the client wants to go, oh, but this part was really stupid. This is where a bunny showed up and was eating, peanut butter on a spoon, or, it's like, and that's really the most profound part. So, and back to like, people have written me about some pretty, what they would have felt were disturbing images, but it's like, I always say, like, a nightmare is a positive sign that power's shifting, so there's no bad dream. It's if you're dreaming it, it's because it's coming out, it's being researched. And I find that when people, and you can say it's synchronicity, it's meant to be, it's fate, I don't know. But I just find that when I do connect with people, they're ready for it. Their dreams go crazy again, like you were talking about with your entrainment. They start, that people can send me 400 dreams in a week. I'm like, how do you remember all that? And pages, like, it's crazy. But anyway, so, and that was kind of back to the technology of it. I was working with people all over the world that, and I knew nothing of their life. I never met them. I've never laid eyes on them, but I knew what's going on in their life from one dream. And as that, blossomed, that was what made me think. I basically took books that I had, created a search engine sort of app that has a cloud that you can type in your dream. And I'm not only going to give you the symbols that you've written out in that cloud, your whole dream, but I'm going to give you kind of the associative symbols. Like, you may not have thought that 8 could relate to homonyms, the, ATE, EI, I give you a lot of stuff to think about with links. It saves the dream to a diary. So the fact that I can work with people without knowing them is what led me to feel like I could create technology. And here's a really funny story that I think you'll appreciate. So when I was writing my dream books back in, I don't know, a long time ago, and I would try to peddle them to the publishers. This is the old world, the way it was back then. And they're like, oh, you're from California. like they thought I was nuts that I would have like a dream interpretation book, and that was based on my own interpretation, not like trying Zohar or whatever crazy stuff's out there. But anyway, so then that was when I stumbled into it was about when the apps started coming out. And I had already had my dictionary online. So I was thinking that by building an app, I would draw traffic to my website. But the app was in the top 10, and it was selling like hotcakes. And this was probably 2007, 2008, right when apps came out. So it was like the publishers didn't get it, but people were ready for it. And here's the beauty. Amazon contacted me to build the app for them when they got their Fire and all that other stuff going. And I thought, who would think that a day would come where an author would be turned down by publishers, but a bookstore would then come and say, write that book for me, or you know what I mean? It was kind of like, it's really, the world has shifted. So anyway, so it ended up doing well, and that was kind of fun.
Well, yeah, you were pretty fearless, and I've known, I've kind of Native American mentors, and I've kind of been part of the shamanistic world in some ways, and I would say a lot of people who are using these kind of ancient ways of looking at the world or exploring the unconscious or would be rather fearful of modern and postmodern technology, but you just jumped right in and brought it together in a way that's really amazing. It's like, did you ever have any qualms about that, or was it just, this is what I have to do?
I do sometimes, because I have a lot of visibility. Like people, you meet people, and if they can go online and know everything about you. You know what I mean? Because they're, that's just the way it goes. And so that part of it. But you know what? Why am I doing it? I'm not. I'm here. I'm a keeper of the flame. I'm a keeper of that ancient whatever, and it doesn't matter if personally I meet people that are like, you interpret what? Or they're not ready for like the land I live in. But no, I mean, I just feel blessed that that I am fearless, because it's not even so much the technology. It's like being in the jungle, sleeping in places where they don't even have bathrooms, just to be with some shamans and study an ancient text. That is a little bit, takes a little bit more guts for me, but it's fun. But yeah, I'm lucky that I know technology, and I think, and it's funny because Javi and I, it seem like we have a lot of similarities in that we're both musicians. We both are good with technology, so we have that right brain, left brain, and it sounds like you're like that as well with the technology that you're building. So it seems like we're kind of evolving, or we're demonstrating ourselves to be that evolved right brain, left brain equal, of variations of the way people are, I guess.
Yeah, and there's getting back to music, and of course we use all kinds of technology for music, from a drum, like a primitive drum, like I see behind you there, to my electric guitars and different effects and amplifiers, and on and on and on. There's a lot of people that are in this field that I find that are musicians, and often when we'll get together, colleagues of how we just we work all day and do things together. Then at night it turns into big jam sessions. And there's something I've been exploring for the last few years, is blues guitar moving into jazz and improvisation. And I find when I'm in that improvisational zone, there's something that very akin to the unconscious, dream work, poetry, flow, a certain fearlessness where you know exactly where to go. And even if you didn't know, you knew where to go, that, and it feeds off the other instruments around you and everything. It's just a really amazing zone, and there's more people in the kind of the integral world that are beginning to write about jazz and about this type of consciousness that's achieved in this improvisational zone in music, that is really can help lead the way to a lot of real breakthroughs in other areas of human endeavor, if you will.
And it's interesting too, because I collaborate with people at different times. I mean, there was a guy that was in Tina Turner's band or something, and we got together and collaborated. That was back in the 90s or 80s. And then I recently was collaborating with somebody, and I know as a musician, you've probably been on stage collaborating, So we're also very psychic, or when it just starts flowing, and whatever it is that's going on non-verbally, without communication, we're creating stuff, and I remember this guy would be playing the music, and I'd show up, and I'd already heard the music and had the words, or I don't know. It's kind of like, so musicians maybe also are real open to, and there's a book by Julian Jaynes called The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Did you like that book?
Yeah, I read it many years ago, like 5 years ago.
But I love his premise for that. There's an associated part of our brain on either side that compensates for the other, except in the language area on the left side, the Wernicke area. On the right side, there is nothing's going. Nothing seems to be happening there. But when they've done split brain epileptic things, they've stimulated it, and the people hear music, they hear voices. And so he's basically saying that we, in our right brain, when, we have this connection, like he's saying that a child is still in that real unconscious space where they can connect with the gods, or whatever you want to call it. The Homeric period was that, he compared it to, I liked that he showed that we are capable of achieving more than what we're utilizing. That was what I got out of his book.
That's right. Yeah, and interestingly enough, one of the things about this brain entrainment technology, they found that it really begins to bring both the left and the right half of the brain. Or some neuroscientists say we have two brains, but it begins to bring those together so you can really have your cake and eat it too. In other words, you can have your linear, analytic, beautiful, mathematical, blah, 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 left side, but you can also have access to that unconscious, poetic, creative, intuitive, serendipitous, archetypical right. And when you can really put those together in a living form, using the technology or using what we know, it really gets interesting. There's a new depth that just wasn't possible before. It's almost infinite.
And it's kind of fun to look at it.
Do you think maybe you could do a screen share and let people see, the the oracle, the apps. Maybe while you explain the oracle as well, I wanted to, maybe you could mention a little bit about the meaning of the nuclear and opposite hexagrams as you describe in your last book.
Okay, sure.
That's beautiful as well.
So basically, there you have to toss for every line. And my question in asking it, and this is interesting because it became a non-changing hexagram. So conflict. So that's kind of interesting. So except I don't get to, so basically if it was changing, what I would say for the answer,
What hexagram is it?
6, conflict. So if I was asking the hexagram, here we're having an interview, and what would you like to say? It seems like the message is that that conflict is a very big part of life, in that it's not going to change, that there's a purpose, like it's because it's an unchanging hexagram. It's, that we don't solve things, we just keep growing. I guess that's the way I would see it. But in order to answer Javi's question about the one hexagram becoming another, I got to throw it again so I can get 2. So did you want to say anything about 6, conflict, before I move on?
Well, stress is the mother of evolution, because we have conflict, we have to show up, and it's in that edge where things really start moving, both interiorly and exteriorly. So, yeah,
Life thrives on it.
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with that one.
Mm-hmm. So that seemed to be the message. So now I'm going to do another reading. What should I ask?
Where does, what is the direction of this thing that we're talking about, spiritual technology, and just in the kind of the overall view of things, what is the reading on that? How's that for a question?
25, because you're throwing.
Isn't that a trip? Wow.
25 changing to 13. So basically what Javi was asking, what Javi was asking was what's called a hugao and a zangao. So when we look at a hexagram like 25, it will have a hidden influence, which is telling us that 25 is the reason for innocence, is that there's something that's trying to manifest. 53 is development, the flowering, the slow growth of something. So when we look at hexagram Wu Wang 25 innocence, we know that the reason that you're being told about innocence is because something has to develop. So there's still some development there. The Zangao, is that when you flip the hexagram around, and then you would get 46 pushing upward, and that's to say this is what you shouldn't do. So the first thing that I'm seeing in this interpretation is that the growth of this type of technology is not going to happen quickly. There's a lot of, whether it's saying it could be meeting a lot of people with closed minds, or that it's going to require a real opening and a commitment to working with people at their speed. It's not a fast process. Then the line, the wanderer's gain is the citizen's lost, and it leads to fellowship. So it's talking about finding your tribe, finding your way of like exactly what you're doing. You're bringing people in that are coming from, we're all saying something very similar, but in our own unique language. Fellowship is that sort of sharing. And line 3 changes then 25 to fellowship. And then, if there was another line here, it would say what that line would do, but we only got one line this time. Does anybody want to say anything about that hexagram? Like, you're getting 25 all the time, so
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, that's remarkable that keeps showing up. And yeah, I think that is right on. There was a Michael Hutchinson wrote a book back in, I think, 1990 called Mega Brain, where he just went through all these different kind of technologies, especially kind of the brain technologies. And I mean, even back then, the science was really solid. I mean, this stuff was just rocking, and he thought, the whole world's going to be using this in the next couple of years, and we're still we're still working on it, and it has been a slow development. Millions of people have used it, but maybe 0.1%, have actually done this stuff. And when we actually start, and it becomes more accepted and starts opening, but I'm not this great strategist or marketer that I know how to do this. I just have to kind of stay open and keep doing my daily thing and stay innocent and stay open, and then the way will be found, or my little bit of it, whatever that might be. And
that's what it talks about. When I was saying before, I like what I'm doing, but then when I meet people in my personal life that have to then learn everything about me because they can, or I have to always remind myself that I'm doing this. I'm not like most of the people I know. I'm doing this because I'm inspired and I'm serving, and that's kind of what this is talking about. It's not about you just have to follow the inspiration and let the inspiration have its own life, and the people will come. But if you're doing it for selfish aims, or if you're doing it for any ego oriented, that we're all, I think, playing in a level where we might as well not even have the physical side. You know what I mean? Like, we're very driven by our vision of evolution. It sounds like your products help people to evolve. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And that's what, kind of what I do too. And I mean, people laugh when I used to tell them, I have a dream app in the top 10. It interprets your dreams. To now, when you hear that, that probably doesn't sound so weird. But just 10 years ago, people thought that was nuts. You interpret people's dreams with an app? How can you do that? Like, how do you even, they just couldn't get their brain around it. So spiritual technology is a way of allowing people in their own space, at their own pace, to self-help themselves. And we just have to, push forward regardless of the feedback.
Yeah. And, when we're working like this, it's like the I Ching and these different things, they're really mirrors. They reflect back to us, our own current state. And without the reflection of the self that's involved with it, it's nothing, But when the self connects with it, then it begins to shift, and then it begins to have meaning. And I can just sense into what you've been saying, what we've been reading, and it's just kind of a push from what I got before, at the beginning of the year, and what I've kind of been just letting germinate, if you will, in my meditation, in my mind, in my dreams, in my psyche. So it's pretty cool.
When I think of fellowship, because there's a lot of hexagrams that have to do with joining other people, communicating and whatever. I mean, fellowship reminds me of kind of a grassroots effort. It's growing stronger by virtue of, bringing other people into it. This is Café au Sol, and it has like a dream dictionary, the I Ching, astrology section, tarot. The tarot is kind of done with logic as well, because there's a placement. I'll just show you this really fast too. If you did like a Celtic cross, depending on the card that's pulled, and I had to write descriptions for all this. And there's the Celtic cross. Let's see, you can see an image of it here. So depending on the card and the placement, and whether it's upside down or reversed or whatever, that's how it gives its interpretation. So there's kind of a lot of logic behind that as well.
You shared the oracle, yeah? And did people get to see the dream app or something?
The dream app. Okay, so I have that here. Basically, this is the cloud where a person types in their dream, they click search, and then they get, the interpretation. And then they also, the dream is automatically saved into a diary. There's a dream dictionary in there if they just wanted to search for their own, dream without. What's nice about this is it has ways of searching. Like, somebody could say that they were on the left side or right side, and you'd never think to look up that symbol. But that's very important on, are you moving towards the past or are you moving towards the future? And so so basically that's that one. Okay, so a boy on a bike with a monkey. So what you get then when you type that in, and this it allows for way more characters than you'll ever need, but you can type it all in, and then you hit search. Search. And so in this case, it gives me the listing of monkey. So it's saying a monkey is playful. It appears to have a sense of, I can't. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading it. The animal can reflect a desire to approach life from a more playful perspective. The bicycle is about balancing. There's like a section in here that talks about transportation symbols. Every transportation symbol is different. A boat obviously has a little bit more to do with motion because the water can reflect kind of the changes and that being buffeted around. A car obviously is our drive to go forward. So a bicycle kind of brings together the idea of balancing something, because you have to really balance yourself on a bike. So it will give you all that, and then it will also save it into a diary, so that you can go back by date and look at your dreams, open it up and see the whole dream you wrote in there. It has articles about how to interpret your dream. So basically that's the app. And then I have another one that is based on, so I have the Way of Dreams app. Let me just see if I can find the screen of this. And so I have like one that's based on like archetypes in the hero's journey, which is called Wheel of Destiny, and then two that are based on the Taoist nature inspiration. And so this one's kind of interesting because you basically come into it and you choose, let me just see if it could say teach me or guide me, and you pull up one of these ideas and it will then give you something in nature, like molting here, the idea of molting. And it's, what you'll see in the video. I think the video is the best way to demonstrate what these apps do, because you can actually hear the sounds. There's a lot of like drumming and really cool stuff to it. But you take some situation that you're challenged by, and it will tell you how nature does it. And out of maybe 150 different elements of nature and how they are achieving success, it kind of links back to your journey. So those are kind of the apps that I have out there. Do you have any questions about that?
Amazing. I've got one. Can people contact you directly through the apps or not?
Yeah, all the apps, they can eventually reach me. They go inside of the app. It will go to the technology side, so everything goes to technology. But eventually, if somebody, like I've had people write that wanted symbols that weren't in dreams, or, people will give me their feedback, and people will want to do dream work. But they eventually, the technology side of the company, sends it to me for follow-up if it has to do with dreams or...
Yeah, and if you go on Google and you go online I Ching, I think your site is the first one that comes up.
Yeah, and it's only been out for like 4 months or something.
Yeah.
No, that's kind of crazy. And a lot of people, that are the old players, you're probably familiar with the other sites that are out there, like Online Clarity, and there's different sites that are out there, and it's just funny to like all of a sudden, boom, I'm up at the top. But my old Way of Tao site was like the number one Tao site, and now it's consolidated into Café au Sol. And I used to have Inspired by Dreams and Way of Dreams, and that's consolidated. So I think another really cool thing is because I've consolidated all these different oracles and everything.
Thank you. I didn't have any more questions, only to say thanks and to share how happy I am that you could make it into this summit and we could have you on and people can get to know about your work, which has changed my life. That's why you're here, so thank you.
That's nice. And I'm really glad to be a part of your group, and I look forward to doing some more with you guys. So you have to let me know what you have in terms of promotion materials, and I can help put some stuff on my site. And
great, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. I just love your your fearlessness, how you just take this ancient stuff and make it available to the whole world. That's just another incredible I don't know, addition or something to the time that we're living in. We just never had this before. So hopefully, the famous rabbi said, there's more good than evil in the world, but just barely. So we have to, we have to push and have to do that, and when we're dealing with the unconscious and we're dealing with the shadow stuff, not only are the dark or the wounds or the traumas, but there's also the light shadows, our essential gifts that get buried, trying to express themselves through our unconscious can cause us all kinds of problems until we start honoring them and working with them. So the way that you're working with that and bringing that forward with these ancient technologies and the honoring of the unconscious, which again, it's not, it's the beginning of modern psychology, but I think you're a few steps beyond, the Freudian, and of course Jung and Joseph Campbell opened it up, and you're just following in that transmission plus a bunch of stuff. So it's really remarkable. So thank you so much.
Thank you.